and welcome to Chronic Boss Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lilly Stairs, and today I am delighted that we have the amazing Jessica March with us. She is a pharmaceutical executive, a patient advocate, and a leader living with multiple sclerosis. With more than 25 years of experience in the pharma and rare disease space, Jess brings such a unique perspective as both someone working inside the healthcare industry and someone navigating life with chronic illness. She's also a board member at the Mount Sinai MS Center and the MSAA. She's also a very popular author on our Chronic Boss Hub and one of our collective founding members. I adore Jess. It's an honor to be able to collaborate with her on the side of my other business, Patient Authentic, and then our work with Chronic Boss. So Jess, thank you for coming on today and sharing all of your insights and wisdom with us.
Well, thank you so much, Lily. I'm so excited to chat with you. It's been a while, and every time we get together, I learn something new and have a lot of fun. So I'm excited to be here.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. So with that, let's jump in. I want to hear your chronic elevator pitch, if you will. So tell me about your MS diagnosis and how it has intersected with your life and career.
Yeah, you got it. Actually, you know what? My chronic illness list is growing. So it's kind of like a grocery list. I'm going to joke about it. So I'm collecting. So not only do I have multiple sclerosis, but I don't know if I mentioned to you recently, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and ADHD. So I am collecting them as we go along.
Love that. And, unfortunately, that does seem to be the case with so many of us that we collect our diagnoses. Yeah. And I am hearing more and more of women who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s getting diagnosed with ADHD as well.
Yes, I know. And honestly, it's been really interesting. But each diagnosis really happened at different stages as I was building my career and my family. I'll just start with the MS diagnosis since that was the most dramatic. Mostly when we go through things the first time, it is the most dramatic. But I woke up one morning when I was 29, completely paralyzed from the waist down. I was an athlete. I had just run a marathon. I was a cyclist. So it literally stopped me in my tracks. I mean, it was devastating at that age. And my first reaction was self-doubt. After I processed the diagnosis, I wasn't sure how I was going to move forward. I had all these questions like, who would hire someone with MS? Would I need to be in a wheelchair? Was I ever going to get married? It was like this mourning period of just trying to understand who I thought I was going to be versus who I was in that moment. But over time, it helped me realize something really important. It didn't take my ambition away. And that's really what I want to stress as in our conversation. It helped me sharpen my ambition and sharpen my focus of what I care about. It pushed me to take care of myself too. At that time, I was going to grad school. I was working full time. I was doing a million things. And it helped me realize how important taking care of my body is, sleep, nutrition, managing my cognitive load, and just learning about my body. It was a really good lesson how to navigate the healthcare system, how to be an advocate and deal with insurance, how to work with doctors and decision makers to make the best decisions for me. So one other thing I'll talk about as we chat is just learning about where to put my energy as well. And that's really what I think about on a daily basis is just like, where am I managing my energy? How am I going to focus my time to be my best? And then I'll just throw in here too, family was a big part of this too. So I have two children. One of them has autism and one of them has ADHD, hence how I figured out I have ADHD, which was an amazing experience to go through that journey with my son. But I think everything that I've learned navigating a chronic illness has prepared me to be an incredible parent to my children who have special needs because I am the most fierce advocate and I've been able to get them services and things that they need and they're going to flourish and be super successful. So I just think that this chronic illness story is just a part of my story, but it's not the limit. It's kind of just like the trampoline for kind of where I'm going with my career and my life and my family.
My trampoline. I love that. I've never heard that. And that is such an amazing analogy. And I just, as you were going through and talking about your story, I don't think that I've ever felt so connected to someone else's story. I feel like we really had a similar path. And the way that you talked about it, I also had these feelings of, oh my God, will I ever get married? Will somebody love me? What am I going to do about my career? And I think it's so important for anyone who's listening, who is maybe your you're in the thick of a diagnosis right now, or you're in the thick of a flare, or you're just like in it, to know that so many of us do come out the other side and you can have a big, beautiful, fulfilling life. And I think both you and I, Jess, are a testament to that. You are married with an amazing family. I'm getting married this June, and we both have these fulfilling careers, and so it's all possible. And I know that it sometimes cannot feel that way, especially when you're first diagnosed. And so, thank you for sharing that, and for using this trampoline analogy, that it's the springboard for you, your chronic illness.
But you
Okay,
don't
love
know
it.
it. You don't know it when you're
Yeah.
in it. It's the
No.
reflection and it's the perspective, I think, that I'm grateful for.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So now let's talk career here. You've
Sure.
spent 25 years, oh my God, in pharma, and you've been in commercialization, you've been in marketing for the majority of your career. What drew you to this space originally, and what's your current role? Because I know that you're actually newly in a new role that you're loving. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I fell into pharma by accident. I feel like most people in the industry have a story like that. Go to school thinking I wanted to work in pharmaceutical marketing. I studied Japanese and business and marketing in college. And I
Cool.
thought I was going to teach English in Japan and just, live a life internationally. And, things changed. But actually, 9/11 had a lot to do with that. To an internship role in a finance role, believe it or not, and just stayed with this company. It was called Aventis at the time, and it turned into Sanofi. I stayed there for almost 8 years, had incredible experience, and met some amazing people, and really saw the impact of working in an industry that helps patients and helps healthcare. It was really meaningful, even before I became a patient. I loved it. But today, I'll tell you where I am today. I won't go through my whole journey, but today I'm the head of global marketing and training at a very small oncology biotech. They're doing incredible things, focused on doing research in T-cell malignancies, so in lymphoma. It's an incredible space. The team is incredible. There's a lot to come for this company that I'm working at. What really drew me to rare disease, and I know you feel this way too, is just how meaningful this work is, right? When you work in rare disease and you're helping patients and you're helping caregivers who have limited treatment options, a lot of challenges, the impact that you have is so meaningful. It's very profound. So I think also living with a chronic illness gives me this deeper appreciation for that, and able to connect on that patient experience level that most people in pharma don't have if they're doing that just for their career. I think it really helps me understand the importance of access to treatments, education, advocacy. And it's also complex. So it challenges my mind intellectually. I think rare disease, and you know this too, it really requires simplifying complex information. What I love about marketing and launching, that's really kind of my expertise, is building something from the ground. I really love starting something new and changing the landscape of healthcare. So connecting the science, the strategy, and patient needs all together is really mission driven for me, and I love it.
That's how I feel about this work too. I feel very lucky that we get to work in such a meaningful space and be able to have passion and purpose infused into our work. And I do find that so many people in the industry that I work with, I think oftentimes pharma gets a bad rap for a number of different reasons. And I don't think it's deserved. Every single person that I have encountered in the industry, they care really deeply about the work that they're doing. They care about the patients. They care about the impact they're making. And it's incredible to be able to play a small role in advancing science and medicine and helping bring these life-saving treatments to patients. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here where I am without the biologic medicine that keeps me in remission and has for over a decade now. So I'm just so grateful to the industry and honored to be able to work in it just like you.
That's so amazing. I'm so glad you're doing well too. That's awesome.
Thanks, Jess. All right. So something you've talked about, and I think we're just so aligned on this chronic boss mentality and how, like you said, our chronic illnesses are really actually like a trampoline or a springboard for our work. So you said lived experience is not a liability. It's a strategic advantage in your work. Tell me more about what you mean by this. And when did you start thinking this way?
Earlier in my career, I used to think that having this chronic illness, having multiple sclerosis, was something I needed to hide. So I actually was not forthright about it until I think it's only been 5 years, believe it or not, 5 or 6 years. It was something I felt like I had to hide and like overcome and like kind of challenge myself to like work harder to prove something to myself in order to succeed. I just had this mentality like, I needed to overwork almost to pretend like I didn't have this. So I was just really worried what people thought about MS. And there's a lot of misconceptions about multiple sclerosis. And I felt like people would think that it was a liability, even in relationships in the future. I just felt like people might think I was less capable. But that was my problem, honestly, that I had to overcome. So over time, working in rare disease and just working in patient healthcare, I realized that this lived experience actually gave me this perspective that you can't learn. You're not getting this at an MBA class, how to deal with insurance and like doing appeals. And you're not going to learn this sitting in a boardroom looking at financial plans for the next 5 to 10 years. Like this lived experience. And like when you have this personal experience to navigate this complex healthcare system, relationship system, like all the advocate work that you have to do, making treatment decisions, how do you manage your emotions? I mean, all of that gives this perspective that you don't get working just like in a job without having this experience. So I really think that it helps me ask different questions. It helps me think about access. It helps me think about patient support. It helps me think, how are these strategies actually going to land practically for somebody? And for me, this lived experience is not personal because to me, it's strategic. I'm able to ask the deeper questions, think outside the box, connect science and strategy to actual logical, relatable experiences that people are going to have. It's added meaning and impact, I would say, in the work that I'm doing. Yeah.
Well said, Jess. I love that because I think it's something that is going to help our listeners understand the value that they're bringing to the table, especially if they are working in healthcare. And I actually want to tag on this here and for a moment talk about an article that you wrote for us on the Chronic Boss Hub that was around this topic. So you are one of our favorite writer on the Chronic Boss Hub. People love your content. And you had one recently that just popped off on our Instagram. It's going gangbusters. So it's called Advocacy is Not a Side Hustle. It really resonated with people. In it, you talk about these benefits of advocates and patients really serving in healthcare leadership roles. So tell me a little bit more about this. Why do you believe this and the impact that you've personally had in your professional leadership roles?
Sure. Well, I just have to say, I did not know that it had this much impact. When you mentioned it, I actually just went on Instagram last night and I was like, I could not believe all the comments and like there were like 200 reshares or something. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. So thank you. That's amazing. It was very encouraging. But like the idea behind the article to me is that advocacy should not be on the sidelines. And it's not just for chronic illness. It's for anything that you have an expertise in that you want to advocate for. A lot of times advocates are brought in after decisions are made. And it's like, what do you think about this decision? What comments do you have? And I feel like having this deep practical knowledge really should put the advocates up front in the boardroom, making the strategy. So I think when this perspective is included in leadership roles in pharma, in the work that you do with Patient Authentic and also Chronic Boss advocacy groups, it just shapes better decisions when advocates are at the decision-making table. Yeah, I think, living with a chronic illness gives insights into realities that patients navigate. It helps, like I said before, think about different questions to ask. And I think being in a leadership role strengthens this work to be able to be an advocate. And to me, it is my work. It's not a side hustle. It's basically how I lead. I lead as an advocate.
This is so well said. And I think you've done a great job being able to articulate why your chronic illness has been valuable to you in your work. But I know for so many, it can be a challenge to be forthcoming about illness in a corporate environment, especially pharma tends to be like a pretty structured, true corporate environment, not so laid back. So what is your advice for folks who are working in corporate and trying to navigate disclosure?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I really believe just like everybody's health journey, the disclosure journey is unique to each person. Everyone's situation is different. Your health is different. The workplace culture is different. And it is a sensitive decision to make. And you really have to understand and decide where you feel safe and when it's appropriate to do so. I shift in different roles. I think about that. I don't disclose all the time. I think it just depends. Obviously, I'm very public now and I speak quite a bit. But for me personally, as I mentioned before, I was very private about living with MS. I think over time, I realized being open about my condition helped me create community and connection with people that I really needed personally. So when I shared my experiences on my own terms, it helped other people just understand me better too, and how I best work, and maybe understand why I care so much about having meetings in the morning versus the afternoon to manage my energy, or having flexibility to get my infusions when I need to do that. So my choice for disclosing, I think, just helped me just have a better connection with people so that they could understand me. I felt like it actually made me a better leader because I wasn't hiding anything and people kind of get it. Everyone needs to make their own decisions of disclosure. I know a lot of people do it gradually too. And honestly, the Chronic Boss Collective is a great way to tiptoe into that, where you don't have to publicly disclose, but you can be part of this community of people that understand, and you don't have to put it on, your Instagram, but you have people that are here that can help support. I think there's different phases of disclosure for people. The big thing to remember is it doesn't define who you are either. I think that resonates with me is, yes, I have this and you're sharing information, but it doesn't define who you are and it doesn't define your success. But I think that community is really important.
Also want to call out this idea of community and that disclosure can create community. And I've seen that in my work. Obviously, I've taken more of an entrepreneurial route, but when I was working in corporate, I did disclose. I made the decision to disclose, and I felt like it did create the ability for me to position myself, because I always talk about, I used it as my secret sauce, right? That I am this person who understands the lived experience. And as a marketer and communications person, I'm going to be able to bring that lens into the work that we're doing and add value there. But I also think that disclosing helped other people, other colleagues around me feel more comfortable. And people would come over to me and say, actually, I'm also struggling with X condition, whether that be another autoimmune condition or something mental health related. It is incredible. There are so many of us we are the majority. There are so many of us living with some sort of chronic condition. And when you disclose, you actually sometimes open the door for other people to feel more comfortable, which is a really beautiful thing.
It is so important. Anytime I do speaking engagements or, I write these articles, people reach out all the time. So many people with MS have reached out to me, which I love when they do. I love when anyone does, honestly, to share something, because it's such a personal connection. And it's important for people to be able to talk to somebody that will listen, and trust them and build that community. I don't know. I think it's great.
Yes, I love it. So you mentioned that in disclosing, it's helped you be able to communicate some of your needs at work, right? Okay, so it sounds like you prefer morning meetings as opposed to afternoon. So you've got a lot going on that you're balancing. You're living with multiple chronic conditions. You're raising 2 kids with special needs. You've got this demanding career. What does managing your energy look like day to day?
Managing energy is my topic I think about literally when I wake up in the morning, when I go to bed at night. So it's a resource that you have to balance. And I'm sure everybody listening knows the spoon theory. This is what the chronic bosses have to plan. So it's basically this idea of managing your energy, which spoons you're going to divvy up during the day. And for me, it means about being thoughtful and prioritize. So what I'm doing is prioritizing my health. So I focus on sleep. That's number 1. Exercise. I got up this morning and did my walk this morning. I think exercise has been really helpful for me. What I eat, nutrition, is really, really important. And also time with my family and my friends, and just, what I'm going to do just to, keep my brain entertained, like reading and music and other types of activities. So I think all that really has a big impact in managing my career, is managing my energy, but it also means building in flexibility. So I know some days I'm going to be really, really tired. So typically by the end of the week, I've used up all my spoons, and I nap on the weekends. That's kind of when I catch up. So, I work with my husband to kind of plan activities where he can take my kids to their activities, and I'm going to nap in the afternoon on Saturday and Sunday. Like, that's kind of a known thing, and we just plan around it. And it's not perfect. It doesn't work all the time. I'm always learning. And with different roles that I have and different demands too, I learn about myself and how I react. And I'm not perfect at it. I mean, I mess up all the time, but at least I know I can be intentional when I need to be as far as my energy.
Yeah, it's so challenging too as women who are ambitious and are like, go, go, go. We want to do all the things. It can be really hard to slow down. It's something I have to intentionally talk to myself about all the time. And actually, since I got my Aura ring, it does tell me when I've been overdoing it. It's like, maybe you should take a pause today because your resting heart rate is elevated and all this stuff. And it almost feels like it's given me a little bit of an excuse to take a step back and say, you know what? I really wanted to go to that HIIT class today, but I think my body might need the rest and I need to listen to it. And I'm being told I need to listen to it. And so let me take a pause and take a beat, and giving ourselves permission to do that, and leaning on others like your husband or your colleagues, and being able to have those open lines of communication around what your needs are and not feeling guilty about that.
That is the big thing of not feeling guilty. That I've had to practice a lot. And I've had to have a lot of conversations with my husband, with my family, with my parents, with my sister, and even my friends, because when you have a chronic illness, sometimes you can't do things. I mean, a lot of times, at least I found myself canceling a lot, and had some friends getting really upset. Like, why are you always canceling? It's because I want to do these things. It's just, I physically can't. And it's about learning yourself, learning your boundaries, and communicating with people, and finding your people that love you and will work with you.
And you mentioned boundaries, big B word. That's very important in our world, right? So what boundaries have been absolutely essential for you in your health while you're still pursuing your goals?
Yeah. Well, boundaries to me equals sustainability. And I've learned the hard way, very hard way, that it is essential, right? And it is also not a sign that you're less ambitious to have boundaries. This is something I've learned recently that is deeply meaningful to me, is that boundaries are the key to success. So for me, like I mentioned before, it's sleep, nutrition, movement, recovery, and taking time to rest is really important. And I also have learned to be realistic on how I structure my time. I can't operate in this constant overdrive. I literally used to work 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. back to back. Didn't even have time to go to the bathroom, Lily. Like, not okay. This is that.
Not okay.
Big learning for me. I am able to build into my schedule now with my new role this life that is so healthy right now for me, which is so great. I don't feel like I have to prove myself all the time. I'm just focusing on what is in alignment, saying yes to things that matter to me, like talking to you. This was a big yes. I cleared my morning for those. I do have big ambitions, but also I have big ambitions to protect my health. And that has been the biggest thing from a boundary perspective for me.
Ooh, big ambitions to protect my health. I love that framing, because we always talk about ambition as it relates to work, but what about being ambitious in our health? That is, something unlocked for me there. I love that. And, I just want to add, I feel like I'm learning with boundaries. They don't always need to be big. I'm setting this massive boundary and I'm never going to do this again. I just actually practiced a boundary this past weekend that was totally new for me. And now I'm in my 6 years of business with Patient Authentic. I would say in 6 years, I maybe have put an out of office on once or twice in 6 years. I don't put an out of office because I don't want clients to think I'm not available or I'm not working. Like, I want people to always feel like they can access me. And then my assistant, Jen, my amazing assistant, said, Lily, you need to start putting an out of office on when you're out of office. Like, people can reach me if it's really an emergency, and I will get in touch with you. And it was a moment for me where I said, you know what? Like, I'm going on my bachelorette this weekend.
Yes.
Do I need to answer an email on Friday afternoon when I'm spending quality time with my friends and this this is ideally, I'm never going to have a bachelorette again. So let me be present for that. And it was literally, it was a big deal for me to put an out of office on. And I think people do that all the time. So they're probably like, Lily, you're insane for not doing it before, but it was a new boundary for me. And so I just want to use that as an example. Like, what's something small in your life that you could add to our listeners? I'm asking, what's something small in your life? Like, what's a new boundary you could add that would protect your energy, protect your time and your health and your time with family and friends?
I love that. I'm so proud of you. I saw your out of office this morning and I was like, that's a good out of office. It actually made me double take. And I'm glad that you mentioned that that was new for you because it is so important. You should do that more. I love that for you.
More. And I don't do enough. So
Jen, by the way. Jen's amazing. That's awesome.
Jen's amazing. She's amazing. Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm so lucky. Yeah. So 2026, the year that I put some out of offices on. So let's try it. So when we think about you're a patient advocate, you're working professionally in pharma and healthcare. I'm curious, as we think about the future of patient leadership, I want to know if you could redesign the healthcare leadership system tomorrow, what role would patients play in shaping the system?
At the boardroom table, honestly, I think people living with chronic illness develop this deep understanding of how healthcare works in the real world. They would be at the decision-making tables. Patients understand access, treatment decisions, insurance challenges, communication gaps, and in pharma, all of those things are really important inflection points. Their perspective is so valuable, and designing these programs and treatments and education and communication, I think they really should be at the table making these decisions. And I mentioned earlier, and I'm guilty of this too, working in pharma, in bringing in patients too late. And it comes at the end of the process. You've done your brand plan, you've done your strategic plan, you've made all these decisions, and then you bring in a group of people to come in and basically check the box. And that's really not okay. And unfortunately, I've seen that happen, and I know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of that. And it's not effective. So I really think that patients need to be part of these leadership conversations. I feel like they should be present from the beginning. I think healthcare works best when science connects with clinical expertise and lived experience.
Ooh, what a line. Everybody needs to be using that.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of everybody's patient-centered, right? That's everywhere.
Yes,
And
everywhere. Every company says that.
Because I'm like, the concept is great. Yes, I want you to be patient-centered, but it just feels like lip service at this point. And so I really like the way that you just framed that up. And I think more people should use it. And I will just say, in having worked in advocacy now for most of my career, I have seen the consequences of not bringing the patient voice in soon enough. So people will sometimes bring me in when it's too late and they're struggling to recruit for their clinical trial because they have a protocol that makes no sense for a real life person to be trying to navigate that clinical trial protocol. Or, you look at there are some big stories out there, like how there was a company that tried to create inhaled insulin and it was a total flop because, and you have to think, God, did they have any conversations with patients about how this was inconvenient and it didn't make sense for them? When you read about the case study on that, it's like, it seems like maybe if they had talked to patients, they would have saved themselves a lot of money. It was millions, if not like $1 billion in losses from that. It was a number of years ago, but it is so important. So I couldn't agree more with you. I think you've got the vision correct, Jess, for what the future of healthcare leadership should look like. Another question I want to ask. So for these patients who want to get involved, who want to lead, and we saw this on your article. If you go onto our Instagram and you look at all the comments, there are so many people who are like, I want to do this. I want to have a seat at the table. I want to be engaged. What is your advice for someone living with a chronic illness who wants to lead, they want to advocate, they want to influence change, especially within the healthcare system?
Yeah, I would say my biggest advice is not to underestimate yourself and your perspective. I think that was a challenge that I faced in the beginning. So if I could do everything over again, I would tell my younger self, don't underestimate yourself. It gives you this insight. Living with a chronic illness gives you this insight that people working in healthcare and policy and corporate environments may not have. And at least they wouldn't have firsthand. And I think you don't need a title to start being an advocate. Anyone can be an advocate. It starts by sharing your perspective, your opinion. Supporting others, I think, is really a good way to be an advocate as well. Participating in patient organizations and groups like Chronic Boss Collective and Patient Authentic, I think, is a great way to be an advocate. And contributing, I think you can contribute professionally and also personally at the same time. But, to me, it starts with connecting with community and where people in little bits to feel comfortable. And it can just feel so isolating sometimes having a chronic illness. And I feel like having a connection with other people makes your experience more relevant, but it also brings this confidence in your own self. And it can fuel momentum if you have this community too, which is why I love Chronic Boss. I guess just to summarize, advice is don't think that your illness defines who you are. It will not define your limits. It can be, like I said, it can be the shape of who you can become in the future too. Everyone has a different story, but my biggest advice is just don't underestimate yourself.
That's really important advice for those of us living with chronic conditions. And honestly, I think for women in general, we're recording this here in March, Women's History Month, also Autoimmune Awareness Month. It's all the things. And we have a tendency to underestimate ourselves, and we all have a lot to offer no matter what. And I think that these experiences, whether it be chronic illness or some other adversity you face, that shapes you, that creates resilience, which is one of the most powerful tools to have in your toolbox when it comes to just living your life and building your career. So never forget that. I really appreciate that advice, Jess.
Thank you. And I also want to point out it's MS Awareness Month in March too. I don't know if you knew that, but
it's all the awareness months. I love it.
There's a lot of awareness going on, but the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America, where I just recently became a board member, is doing a lot of information. And guess what their theme is? It's self-advocacy. That's their theme this month. So it's
perfection.
Incredible. There's so much information available for anyone. If you're living with MS or you know someone with MS, that you can find information through their group too. It's mymsaa.org.
Okay, love it. Now I have to give a plug for Autoimmune Association because I'm the board chair of the Autoimmune Association. And same, so if you're out there listening, whether it be MS or any other autoimmune condition, we are doing a ton of work this month for Autoimmune Awareness Month. It's autoimmune.org. I'm going to be on Capitol Hill actually this upcoming week talking to senators and representatives about healthcare legislation that will help really support our community. There are so many different ways to get involved, and these advocacy organizations can be a great place to start. So for those of you who are looking for a place to start and to share your story and to connect, I recommend connecting with these organizations because they could really be a perfect way to start your journey in that arena. Yay. Okay, awesome. So Jess, oh my gosh, we've covered so many topics and I could literally talk to you all day.
I know.
We probably could use a podcast conversation for every different question we went through. We could do a whole season, but we have to wrap things up. So I'd love to know from you, our favorite question. What does being a chronic boss mean to you?
Okay. So to me, being a chronic boss means recognizing that living with a chronic illness does not diminish your ability to lead, create, or make an impact. It changes how you approach things and it gives you new perspective, which is great. So the three ideas that I come back to when I think about chronic boss is your lived experience is an advantage. It's not a liability. Energy management is a form of intentional leadership, and community and representation matter. So when people with all these things have a voice in the room, the system gets better for everybody.
And so I encourage all of you who are listening, go follow along with Jess on LinkedIn. She's very active on LinkedIn. She's also, as I mentioned a few times, an author on our hub. So you can continue to hear from her there where she offers her insight and her wisdom. Jess, is there anywhere else people can find you or ways to connect with you?
That's the best place, I think. LinkedIn is probably a good one.
Okay, we love LinkedIn. Well, thank you, Jess, for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Thank you all so much for listening. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Chronic Boss Unfiltered.